Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Muslims across the world are protesting against India's unilateral revocation of Kashmir's status as a disputed territory. This comes as India scrapped Article 370 of its constitution in a rushed decree. Political parties, civil society and students held protests against India in Azad Kashmir, Islamabad and Karachi. Indian opposition and civil society held rallies against the BJP's bill in New Delhi, Bangalore and Kolkata, amongst others. In occupied Kashmir, political leaders and civilians took to the streets against the abrogation of Article 370. In London, right activists and Pakistani diaspora held rallies outside the Indian High Commission. Meanwhile, Bangladeshi students in Dhaka also expressed solidarity with the people of Kashmir in a rally. Demonstrators chanted slogans against New Delhi's expansionist ambitions in India. Pakistan Military Corps Commanders Conference has supported government's rejection of Indian actions regarding Kashmir. Presided by Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa, the meeting said Pakistan Army firmly stands by the Kashmiris in their just struggle to the very end. Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa said Pakistan never recognized the sham Indian efforts to legalize its occupation of Kashmir through Article 370 or 35A decades ago. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation's Kashmir-focused wing is holding a meeting in Jeddah today to discuss recent Indian actions. This comes a day after India scrapped Article 370, stripping occupied Kashmir's special status. The Pakistani delegation, led by Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, is participating in the meeting. Pakistan Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammad Faisal says India's try to annex occupied Kashmir is bound to fail. Indian and British politicians have reacted strongly to India's move to revoke occupied Kashmir's disputed territory status. The Indian National Congress ex-president Rahul Gandhi said the ruling BJP violated the constitution to tear occupied Kashmir apart. Gandhi said this abuse of executive power by the BJP will have grave implications for India's national security. Senior Indian Congress leader P. Chidambaram called the move a fatal legal error. British MPs Debbie Abrahams and Richard Burgon expressed deep concern of the Indian government's unilateralism. Both wrote to the Secretary of State Dominic Raab about the issue, urging him to take notice of the conflict. Former occupied Kashmir Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti called it an utter betrayal of trust by the government. Meanwhile, the US State Department said it is closely following events in occupied Kashmir after recent developments. The international media has also criticized India over a rushed decree to scrap occupied Kashmir's UN-recognized status as a disputed territory. British newspaper The Guardian wrote that this sudden move will have grave consequences that are difficult to predict. The New York Times wrote India silenced the voice of Kashmir before passing this controversial bill. The Independent wrote, through this decree, the Modi government has shut the door to a democratic, peaceful solution in Kashmir. Calling out the move, Al Jazeera headlined India's suspension of Article 370, the darkest day in the country's democracy. South China Morning Post said India's secularism claims were the biggest loser after BJP's push for the accession. Seoul claims North Korea has fired 2 more missiles into the sea of its east coast. The latest tests follow the launch of joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korean forces. These are North Korea's 4th such missile tests in less than 2 weeks. South Korea's defense ministry claims the missiles resembled short-range ballistic missiles launched by the North in late July. Spokesperson Choi Hon-soo says the tests violate an inter-Korean military agreement. North Korea said the joint military exercises in South Korea have forced it to develop and test more weapons. It said the drills violate commitments made in recent talks with the U.S. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Washington will not overreact to Pyongyang's missile launch. China says it will take countermeasures if the U.S. deploys intermediate-range missiles in Asia. Foreign Ministry Arms Control Chief Fu Kong says China will not sit idle and let the U.S. station ballistic missiles in its backyard. Fu urged China's neighbors to be cautious and not allow the U.S. to use their territory. He warned the U.S. allies in the region they would face consequences if they host American missiles. This comes after the U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Washington wants to quickly deploy new intermediate-range missiles in Asia. Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned Moscow will develop new nuclear missiles if the United States begins to produce them. Putin's statement came after a meeting with his Security Council. President Putin has ordered Russian authorities to closely monitor any steps the U.S. takes to develop, produce or deploy missiles. Putin also urged the U.S. to launch meaningful arms control talks. The U.S. formally left the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty last week after accusing Moscow of violating the deal. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has warned the U.S., saying a conflict with Iran will be the mother of all wars. Rouhani said peace with Iran will also be the mother of all peace. In a televised speech, he said if the U.S. wants negotiations with Iran, it must lift all the sanctions. Earlier, Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Tehran will leave the 2015 nuclear deal if necessary. Tensions between Tehran and Washington have escalated over the nuclear deal, maritime security in the Gulf, and U.S. sanctions. Britain has joined the United States in a maritime security mission in the Strait of Hormuz. Defense Secretary Ben Wallace says it's vital to protect freedom of navigation in the key shipping route. The purpose of the U.S.-led maritime security mission is to protect shipping through the Strait of Hormuz amid tensions with Iran. Meanwhile, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas says his country will not join a U.S.-led naval mission. Speaking to reporters in Poland, Maas said Germany favors a European mission but warned of the difficulty in making progress. He said it would take time to convince the European Union to carry out such a mission. The United States says it will not accept any Turkish military operation in Syria. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says Washington will prevent any unilateral incursions. Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan announced on Saturday that Ankara is going to launch a military operation in northwestern Syria. The operation will be Ankara's 3rd offensive to dislodge Kurdish fighters close to its border. Turkey has been in talks with the U.S. over the establishment of a militant-free safe zone across its border in northern Syria. Erdogan announced the military offensive after Washington ignored its demand for urgency over the matter. Syrian government forces have resumed military operations against rebels in the northwestern Idlib region, accusing them of violating a ceasefire. Both the sides agreed a truce during the Astana format peace talks in Kazakhstan on August the 2nd. The Syrian army took action after rebels allegedly bombed a Russian airbase in Idlib. Syria's state media had accused Turkey of helping rebels in launching the attack. NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says a peace deal in Afghanistan is closer than it has ever been before. His statement comes as US and Taliban officials work out the details of an agreement in Qatar. Speaking in New Zealand, Stoltenberg said NATO will not indefinitely stay in Afghanistan.
We will not stay longer in Afghanistan than necessary. But the thing is that we have to make sure that the gains we have made, both when it comes to making sure that Afghanistan doesn't once again become a safe haven for international terrorists, which is actually important for our security.
Earlier, US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has said excellent progress has been made in the 8th round of the Doha talks for Afghanistan. Now, moving on, the US has frozen all Venezuelan government assets in a fresh move to pressure President Nicolas Maduro. The White House says Venezuela's assets cannot be transferred, paid, exported, or withdrawn from the US. In an executive order, President Trump has barred Americans from doing business with Caracas. Maduro's supporters have been banned from entering the US. The latest sanctions put the US trade relations with Venezuela on a par with long-term foes Cuba, Syria, Iran, and North Korea. 8 people have been injured in a series of explosions at a Russian military base in Siberia. The Emergencies Ministry says 11,000 residents were evacuated from the Krasnoyarsk region. The ministry says 5,000 more residents are being evacuated. Local administrators ordered Russia's biggest aluminium smelter to shut down as the blaze spread. The detonations at the base have stopped and emergency services are trying to control the fires. Anti-government protesters have been arrested after they clashed with police in the Nigerian city of Lagos. Protesters from the Revolution Now movement took to the streets calling for the government to do more or step down. The government condemned the movement, calling it a veiled attempt to destabilize the country. The State Security Service deemed the calls for revolution unlawful. Coming up next in the Bulletin. Argentina have defeated Chile to win gold in the men's handball. Unprecedented heat melted billions of tons of extra ice in Greenland. Welcome back. The 18th African Growth and Opportunity Act Summit has opened in Ivory Coast. The meeting seeks to boost trade between the United States and Sub-Saharan Africa. Representatives from 39 African countries are attending the event. These countries want to benefit from the vast American market of 350 million consumers.
We will combine the promise of the AFCFTA with these new U.S. initiatives to help maximize the potential of U.S.-Africa trade.
The African Growth and Opportunity Act, made law by the U.S. in 2000, provides preferential access to its market for exports from eligible African countries. Now moving on to Italy, where the parliament has approved a decree toughening penalties for migrant rescue ships operated by charities in the Mediterranean. Drawn up by Interior Minister Matteo Salvini, the decree hikes the maximum fines for ships illegally entering Italian waters. The fine has been increased from 50,000 euros to 1 million euros. It also provides for the arrest of captains who ignore orders to stay away and calls on the naval authorities to seize their vessels. This comes as Spain's Proactiva Open Arms charity sought permission to disembark rescued migrants in either Italy or Malta. As the unemployment rate hits an 11-year high in South Africa, people are struggling to make ends meet. Despite President Cyril Ramaphosa's pledge of an economic turnaround, the current statistics portray a bleak future. Job cuts across a host of sectors are set to continue into the next few years.
South Africa's unemployment rate jumped to its highest since the global financial crisis more than a decade ago. This has piled pressure on an already shrinking economy. Though the government provides grants, it's not enough for survival.
It's month end, now I have to be looking for specials. My little brothers get a son, I have to go buy nappies, I have to be looking specials, I have to go buy food. I mean, I'm the only sole breadwinner at the age of 30. Or else it's traumatic. I'm looking after two 21-year-olds and a 1-year-old.
Government-owned organizations are also facing huge losses, forcing them to lay off workers. President Cyril Ramaphosa has promised to create 100,000 new jobs, but analysts doubt he can do it.
I think South Africa has been growing structurally like a developed country. So the sectors that have been growing fast have been sectors like the finance sector, construction sectors, and these sectors belong to the non-tradable sectors. So these are sectors that cannot be traded and we can't get revenues from them.
Economists say the government needs to focus more on the agricultural sector. They warn the economy could deteriorate further if it's not prioritised.
Lows and the highs of the business world now. European markets are mixed after the escalating trade war between China and the US sent Asian and US indices plummeting. London's FTSE 100 index is down fractionally, while Paris and Frankfurt are marginally higher. Earlier, Asian stocks slid again on China's decision to halt purchases of American agricultural produce and letting the yuan slip against the dollar. Tracking overnight losses on Wall Street, Australia's ASX 200 index shed more than 2%. The Shanghai Composite, Hong Kong's Hang Seng and Kospi all lost more than 1%. Japan's Nikkei 225 was down a fraction after recovering from early losses. Crude oil futures are trading 1% up. And now the sports updates at Peru Pan American Games. Argentina have defeated Chile to win gold in the men's handball. Brazil have edged Mexico to take the bronze. Argentina eased past Chile by 31 goals to 27. Centre-back Diego Simonet led the Argentina attack with 11 goals. In the bronze medal playoff, Brazil cruised to victory over Mexico, winning 32 goals to 20. Meanwhile, in the men's 10-meter platform diving final, Mexico's Kevin Berlin Reyes has won the gold. Reyes' compatriot Ivan Garcia Navarro claimed silver, while Vincent Rondeau of Canada came third and took the bronze. On to cricket now. Australia beat England by 251 runs to win the first test of the Ashes series at Edgbaston. The win put Australia ahead in the series in the UK for the first time in 14 years. Steve Smith was declared man of the match for scoring centuries in both innings for Australia. Nathan Lyon sent 6 batsmen back to the pavilion in England's second innings. This was the first test loss for England at Edgbaston in 11 years. South Africa's leading wicket-taker Dale Steyn has retired from Test cricket to prolong his limited overs career. He will be available for one-day and T20 internationals. Steyn made his Test debut in 2004 and took 439 wickets. He played his last Test match in February against Sri Lanka at Port Elizabeth. Steyn is 8th in the list of highest wicket takers in the long format. On to soccer now. Barcelona have defeated Arsenal by 2-1 at the Camp Nou to win the Juan Gamper Trophy. Luis Suarez came off the bench to fire Barca's last-minute winner. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang opened the scoreline for Arsenal in the first half, but Ainsley Maitland-Niles' own goal led Barca back into the game with 20 minutes to go. Uruguay stalwart Suarez increased the pressure on the Gunners and eventually found the winner. Ernesto Valverde handed Camp Nou debut to Roberto Neto, Antoine Griezmann and Frankie de Jong. Now the weather updates. The European Union says July was the world's hottest month ever. The bloc's Copernicus Climate Change Service reported that every month of 2019 has ranked amongst the 4 warmest on record. Searing heat waves in July saw records tumble across Europe, reaching as far north as the Arctic Circle. The EU said July was 0.04 degrees Celsius warmer than the previous record hot month set 3 years ago. It says the unprecedented heat melted billions of tons of extra ice in Greenland. It also sparked wildfires across Siberia and Alaska, releasing 100 million tons of carbon dioxide. The Copernicus Climate Change Service warned temperatures would continue to rise years into the future. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus News.